Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Presto at Scale panel. We have Gurmeet Singh, Neerad Somanchi, and Shradha Ambekar from Uber, Meta, and Intuit as our panelists. And I'm Rupa Gangatirkar. I will be moderating the panel today. Welcome again, and let's get started. Presto at scale, it's been over a decade. Presto has become one of the most widely used and adopted open source SQL query engines. But today in this panel, what we are going to talk about is, Presto has already established itself. Now we are going to talk about how we are going to scale up and scale uh, uh, away from Presto, and how different companies, large and small, are using it, innovating it, using Presto at their scale. So with that, I would like to invite Shraddha to introduce herself, and she would talk about her use case at Intuit. Welcome, Shraddha.
Hi, my name is Shradha Ambekar. Happy to be here and looking forward to a great panel discussion. I'm a senior staff engineer at Intuit, and I'm part of the analytics, AI, and data org. Over the past few years, I've been heavily involved with building data platforms and frameworks at Intuit, and heavily invested into Presto and Spark for the last couple of years. And as part of this, I've also contributed to open source community. I have been a contributor to Apache Spark Cassandra connector, also to Apache Calcite, and Presto on Spark recently. So at Intuit, we are using Presto for our analytics use cases. So majority of our analysts are working on the tax use cases use Athena for exploration, which underneath uses Presto. And there are flavors to how we are using it. First, we use it for exploration, as I described. We are also using it for self-serve analytics. So all of these analysts are directly connecting their Tableau and ClickSense dashboard through Athena. And then the last one is for processing. So all of this, the exploration queries that I described, and all of them are productionized and operationalized using Presto on Spark. So we are using not the Presto proper processing, but the Presto on Spark, leveraging the rich SQL dialect, which is provided by Presto, and the scalability features, which are provided by Spark.
Thank you, Shraddha. That's a great introduction, and we will be getting into details of different data architectures that all these three companies are using. So, with that, I would like to go to Neerad. If Neerad, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Neerad Somanchi. I work at Meta as a production engineer on the Presto team. So I've been at Meta and the Presto team for about 5 years now, and it's been a really fun experience. I'm really interested in like distributed systems, specifically like running them at scale in an efficient and like a reliable manner. I think there are a lot of challenges that are posed there, and it's fun and exciting to solve all of those. It's been a great journey on the Presto team so far here at Meta, and we've scaled from a very small number of like Presto clusters handling very little traffic back when I joined around 2018 to having a very large footprint in the data warehouse at Meta. So it's been a richly rewarding experience. I've also contributed a little bit to the Presto open source, but not as much as I would like to, I guess. But other than that, within Meta, I've mostly been concentrating on um, helping Presto scale up, utilize different kinds of capacity that we have, and make Presto more amenable to understand understanding how it utilizes all this capacity that we have. So coming to like the use cases that Presto is used for at Meta, it has a wide range of use cases. starting from the usual exploratory SQL analytics that a lot of employees at Meta use Presto for, all the way to large, batch ETL workloads. And uh, it provides like an end-to-end solution for the users in the sense that they start exploring data sets in an interactive interface, and then they build pipelines, and then they have them run transforms and run big batch workloads. And it runs the entire gamut. And I think, like Shradha mentioned, we also have different flavors of Presto in essence to solve the different use cases. We have very low latency RaptorX for Presto, which serves low latency dashboards, all the way to utilizing Presto on Spark to run really long running large queries, which benefit from recoverable execution that Presto on Spark provides. So yeah, that's it for me for now.
Thank you, Neerad. I mean, it's always good to hear from Meta, being the inventor and originator of Presto. So it's always curious to know what's next at Meta in terms of Presto. So thank you for sharing. Gurmeet, welcome to the panel. We would like to hear Uber's thoughts and what's been happening at Uber with Presto at scale.
Thanks, Rupa. Hi, everyone. My name is Gurmeet Singh. I'm a staff engineer in the Uber Presto team. I have been at Uber in this team for around 3.5 years now. Before Uber, I spent a couple of years at Meta, but there I was more a user of Presto than actually in the Presto team. So got a flavor of it. And before that, I spent around a decade working in the storage area. So in big companies and in couple of startups. So there was working on storage as a service in a private infrastructure environment. So for me, it is kind of moving up the stack from the storage layer to the analytics layer. So where you are kind of able to see how the business use cases are being handled. So it was very interesting journey so far at Uber, and very interesting stuff to work on.
Thanks, Gurmeet. Thank you so much. I would like to kind of dive deeper now after the introductions. We'd like to see briefly, Shradha, if you could share the data architecture that you are using and that you have set up at Intuit. Shradha, you there?
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I have to discuss that. Sorry, there was an issue on my side, internet.
That's okay. We have you back now.
Yeah. Is there a question for me?
We were waiting for you to share your slides so that you could talk about your, yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I did not hear that. Okay.
The data architecture at Intuit, that if you could briefly explain.
Yes. Yeah, let me share my screen. Do you guys see my screen?
No, yes, it's about to come up, and yes, we can see it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so before I talk about the architecture, I will highlight Intuit data landscape. So we have around hundreds of thousands of tables with petabytes of data. We have 30 plus decades of historical data, and we serve 100 million plus customers. So this is our high level data architecture. We have data coming in from various systems, various formats. All of this data is materialized and curated and persisted into clean data lake. So we call clean data lake as all the data that is persisted here should have, should follow Intuit's best data standards, should have stewardship, owners, should have good documentation, schema specifications, data quality, observability, and all the good things. And once the raw data is persisted, it is further transformed, generate aggregates, enriched, and then persisted back. And for data persistence, most of majority of Intuit products are using AWS. So S3 we are using for persistence. Some of the Intuit products as Credit Karma and MailChimp use GCP, so we have that also. Delta Lake is one of the major data format which is used at Intuit, but we are currently evaluating Apache Iceberg as well. For data processing, we have Presto, Spark, and Flink. Most majority of the processing is done using Spark, and we are using Presto as a library on Spark for processing. And all of this rich metadata is persisted into what we call as Intuit's data map registry, and which powers, data discovery, exploration, quality, and observability. And all of the systems work together to power AI and analytics at Intuit. So we use Amazon Redshift here at Intuit, and then Athena also as an exploration tool and self-serve analytics. And then we have the ClickSense and the Tableau dashboards. So as I mentioned in my introduction and the use case, so majority of our analysts which are serving tax business use Athena for exploration. And all those queries we productionize and operationalize it as data pipelines using Presto and Spark. So that's the high level. Stop sharing.
Thanks, Shraddha. I have a couple of follow-up questions, and then we can move to Neerad. With the data architecture that you shared, and everything that you are using with Presto and Spark, how do you see in terms of business impact by using Presto on Spark, in terms of how many queries you are handling per day, as well as the query failure rate, the queuing time, the success. If you could share what is the benefit of Presto at Spark at Intuit.
Yeah, I'll share back my screen again.
Okay.
So definitely, one of the, do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so I will also talk about, I'll go back to the screen, right? So we have also developed a self-serve tool known as Superglue, through which, our analysts schedule pipelines. We make it seamless for them. And this is what our growth has been. We serve around 400 plus users, and we have, 20x pipeline growth. We have thousands of analyst report that we serve. And what we have seen is, so before, Presto on Spark, what the analysts were used to do is, because our processing was on Spark, so they would manually convert their queries from Presto to Spark dialect, right? So you can always argue that, okay, there are query translation tools available with LLM and GenAI, you can also convert it. But there is always this subtle differences, right? You need to learn the technology. There is also, UDX you need to port. So there was a lot of hours spent between the conversion. And then Presto on Spark makes it very seamless, because right now it's the same query that they were testing with exploring, and the same query they can work they can operationalize using Presto on Spark. And we made it seamless using our platform. And I can highlight the success metrics. There were thousands of jobs successfully running in production. We improved analyst productivity. We saved thousands of estimated hours in the manual conversion, and there was great feedback. And all of this work that we did has powered the tax season for last year as well as this year.
Great. I wish, it could get some extra bucks in everyone's bank after filing the tax, but
Yep. All of in product analytics, marketing analytics, all the aggregate reports, tax filings, everything is powered by Presto.
Great to hear that. Maybe, one additional query you can sneak in, to get one extra bug next year. Thank you so much, Shraddha. Neerad, if there are any specific business impact that you directly saw at Meta, and what new features that you're planning using Presto at scale?
So I think, like I mentioned, right, Presto at Meta has evolved from when it started, like quite a bit. Initially, like I said, it just started off as we needed something fast for interactive analytics use case. And then we built that, and users found that compared to something like Hive that was there at that time, um, because of its efficiency, people at Meta started using it for something more than just interactive analytics use case. They started using it for lightweight ETL workload, and soon Presto, we saw that that was something that the users wanted, and Presto was soon augmented to support larger ETL workloads. We've had features like Presto Unlimited, supporting some sort of materialization of intermediate stages, and while that did help, handle user growth and query growth for some time, eventually we hit the limits in terms of what we could do in the streaming engine. And then that's when out of that was born Presto on Spark. And initially, the idea was that, yeah, like Shraddha had mentioned, if a user can, from the prototyping stage of or exploratory stage where they're just writing SQL queries, messing around with data, to eventually having it run in production, a pipeline consistently run in production, scanning like a large amount of data and doing a lot of processing. It's just one SQL language that is there for the user, and it makes it much simpler for the customer and in terms of its experience. So the entire gamut of very low latency dashboarding type of queries that C-suite executives might be looking at, all the way to large transforming large ETL workloads that are running on huge amounts of data. Presto is, with one SQL, we're able to solve that. And one of the major reasons, this is one of the major reasons why we are actually migrating Spark SQL into Presto within Meta, because Spark also has a big footprint within Meta. But obviously, we had Spark SQL before, and the idea is that Presto will be the only SQL interface for all sorts of data workloads, data warehouse workloads at Meta. In terms of metrics, it's pretty heavily used. We have like tens of thousands of users, like all employees within Meta, hundreds of clusters of like vanilla Presto or Presto Classic, as we call it, which is not Presto on Spark. Tens of millions of queries running per day, and the data being processed at an exabyte scale on a daily basis. So yeah, Presto on Spark, and it handles a whole lot of the data warehouse workload as it stands today, and it's poised to take up even more as the migration from Spark HQL into Presto SQL continues.
Thanks, Neerad. And of course, it brought down the runtime, query runtime, as well as the response time to, I guess, fraction of a second, I believe.
For Presto Classic, yeah, it definitely did. Yeah.
Thank you. Gurmeet, would like to turn to you now. We all know we want, Uber Eats order to be at my doorstep, right? The moment I submit my order, same with my ride. I'm expecting my ride to be right there. So how do you see this direct user impact and, user value added to your customers using Presto at scale at Uber?
Yeah, so I think it is a combination of the use cases that I think Shraddha and Neerad already kind of talked about. Is starts with exploratory analytics. So our operations folks want to do a quick analysis about how the operations are going, but after that it quickly turns to batch ETL workloads, where you have run a query on an ad hoc basis, but you want to now convert it into a pipeline. So we saw a lot of our bulk of our use cases is batch ETL workloads that we run. But other than that, dashboarding, reporting, even experimentation, analysis is done using it's kind of a pretty solid backbone on which a lot of the business operations, some are directly, but some indirectly related to Presto.
Thank you, Gurmeet. And I understand you have your next commitment. Before you go, I would like to ask you one question about how do you see the world of large language models, LLMs, intercepting Presto in the future?
Yeah, that's a interesting question. So I think there is, we don't, we are starting to look at it, and it's a very interesting angle, but I think probably it will take some time to get it right, because the queries that we see sometimes are pretty complicated queries, like it's like thousands of lines of SQL. So I think getting that kind of a query generated automatically might take some work, but I think it's a promising direction.
Thank you, Gurmeet. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
for
Rupa.
sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Neerad, I would like to have your take on, how do you see the future of LLMs intersecting Presto, or, in the future or in near future?
I think personally, I feel like one of the biggest advantages is probably helping the end user or the customer actually build or author SQL queries. I think for someone who's brand new to using SQL, it can take some time for them to ramp up and kind of figure out what they want to do with the data. I mean, how they want to do something with data. And I think LLMs in this sense can help a lot in terms of changing what the user wants from, changing the user's language potentially from writing SQL to actually providing a prompt that generates SQL for them that eventually runs on Presto. I think that's one of the really promising ones. It can also greatly help with suggestions when someone writes SQL, like, if it could be written in a more efficient way, and the LLM kind of suggests that. And I think these are a couple of the use cases that I see on a personal note from how LLMs can help end users of Presto.
Thanks, Neerad. And you kind of, pre-answered my next question. I was going to ask you about, will prompt engineering replace or augment the querying style that we have, excuse me, using Presto? What do you see it as? Will it replace it completely, or will it augment it, or it will be a kind of a golden mean between the two?
I personally think that probably initially we would have it somewhere in between, where the prompt essentially generates SQL for you and then sends it over to Presto, potentially requiring some hand holding. But I guess as these models get better and the accuracy improves, you could literally just type in a prompt and don't have to think much, and the data arrives.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Neerad. I would now turn to Shradha before we conclude our panel. Shradha, how do you see, same questions. I don't want to repeat it again. Your take on it, and if there is anything that Intuit is thinking in that direction, if you could share that with our audience.
Yeah, definitely. Intuit is accelerating the journey of Gen AI and leveraging LLMs. Intuit has also published its own LLM. So we also actually around mid of May, we had engineering days where majority of us were exploring LLMs. So I definitely see LLMs and Gen AI revolutionizing the analytics field. It used to be all BI earlier, Tableau dashboards and ClickSense and that kind of reporting. And I definitely see, LLMs playing a huge role. Yeah, so we haven't really tested with Presto, but we did some prompt engineering, and you ask a question about your data, and then LLMs, you train your models and it answers questions. And definitely it's a good way to author your queries as well, your data pipelines, and also for interactive, even exploration, I see could be replaced by prompt engineering. So I definitely, there is a lot more coming in this field. So it's exciting times.
Thank you, Shraddha. That's really exciting. I can't agree anymore. So yeah, I mean, Presto at scale with all its efficiencies, advantages, its high availability, low latency, with all the good things that Presto at scale offers. If we can club that with, the new advent of large language models and all prompt engineering, generative AI, and everything, if we can use Presto's capabilities and abilities to generate good prompts with all the biases reduced or removed, and have a good use of all the LLMs that are coming up, it will be a great merger of technologies for future to watch. So thank you so much, Neerad, Shraddha, and thank you, Presto at Scale panel organizers. We had a good time. I hope the audience enjoyed the conversation. I guess we are up our time. So, Avi, if you are there, please let us know, and we could conclude the session. Thank you so much again.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you. So there are some questions. I'm just replying on the chat.
Yeah, if you wanna just reply verbally, that will be great. Anybody,
Yeah,
Neerad, you
yeah.
and Shraddha.
First question was, can Presto and Spark leverage data from Apache Iceberg? I'm assuming it would be because Presto has support for Apache Iceberg. We are also evaluating Apache Iceberg as a data format. We haven't tested Presto and Spark, but I'm assuming it will work seamlessly because of the native support provided by Presto. Neerad, do you want to add? Okay.
Yeah, I think as long as since Presto itself has the support, I guess it should be able to do that. But yeah, I don't think we've explored that specifically. So I can check back and reply to that.
I guess we have one more question by Kwei.
Yeah. So in case both Presto and Spark using Spark Notebook, okay, are used by analysts to query data, what's your experience on recommendation of having a unified authorization solution for both query engines instead of duplicating the same permissions separately for same human user? So this is my take, right? Spark is a different query engine. Presto is a different query engine. I'm not sure how we can tie the authorization between two different query engines. Or otherwise, if you want to have a unified experience, that's when, the Presto and Spark comes in. Presto's. You can also use the Presto query for exploration, and the same SQL query you can also use for your batch workloads. So that's my take. How about you, Neerad? Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it looks like based on what I'm understanding, yeah, my answer would be similar to yours in that if the permissions and as such are set up for, let's say, using Presto in a similar way, the Presto on Spark should kind of work. I'm not entirely sure what the question is about in relation to Presto itself using Spark notebooks.
Thank you, Shraddha and Neerad. There is one more question. What is the use case of Iceberg?
So we are evaluating, so we have Delta Lake as one of the table format, and we are currently evaluating. We haven't decided, but what we see is that Iceberg has better support from AWS and other native solutions such as Redshift, and that's where we are evaluating, but we haven't decided.
And I guess you are yet to see the benefits of it, or
Yeah.
you have any idea about
Yeah, we are currently in the process of doing benchmarks.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Are there any other questions from the audience? Thank you, Shrikant, for asking that question. I guess we do not have any questions, looks like. And Neerad, Shradha, any parting notes you would like to share?
Yeah, this was a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to all the great innovations coming on Presto and adopting it.
Thank you, Neerad.
Yeah, thanks a lot for hosting this, and it was a really good experience discussing with other people in the industry on how they're using Presto and running it at scale. And yeah, hopefully looking forward to more discussions like this in the future and potentially collaborating in the open source repos. Yeah.
Absolutely. I come from startup world, so we always have like ideas floating. We have idea ocean. So I learned a lot. Thank you so much to all three of you. Gurmeet is left earlier, but thank you so much for sharing. And I would love to collaborate with all of you in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.